How's it going, everyone? This is the George here, and today we are continuing the series of X-Men, Wolverine, Deadpool movies, leading up to Deadpool Wolverine with the 2013 movie The Wolverine. This was the next attempt at a solo Wolverine movie, this time directed by James Mangold and stars Hugh Jackman. And this one actually takes place after the events of X-Men: The Last Stand. And at the time, it was considered the most recent movie in the X-Men timeline before Days of Future Past and Logan, due to the previous two X-Men movies that came out after Last Stand and before this movie being origin stories. You had X-Men Origins Wolverine, which I reviewed on the channel. That was a bad movie. And then you had X-Men First Class, which I will review at some point on this channel, hopefully in August. And that was a pretty good movie that explored how Professor X and Magneto had met each other as Charles and Eric, and how they had formed the school and eventually had their separation. But yeah, this movie, The Wolverine, takes place after the events of X-Men: The Last Stand. Wolverine is in self-exile as a hermit in the woods after he, spoiler, if you haven't seen X-Men: The Last Stand, it's an 18-year-old movie, so you've probably seen it already, but spoiler, Wolverine hadn't killed Jean Grey to stop the Phoenix and save the world, and it's still haunting him. Famke Janssen, sorry if I mispronounced that name, once again returns as Jean Grey in Wolverine's nightmares. And when Wolverine hears that someone that he had saved from World War II when the atomic bomb dropped, it was a former Japanese soldier, is dying and wants to see him before he passes away, Wolverine goes to Japan, and this guy that he saves offers him a chance to be immortal, take away his healing powers so he can die like anyone else. And the doctor that's healing this guy turns out to be the villain Viper, and she poisons Wolverine and takes away his healing ability. So when he's trying to protect this man's granddaughter, Mariko, from other evil forces that are happening, Wolverine is basically pushed to his limit because his healing factor is not working. Now, to me, this was the Wolverine movie that I think we probably should have gotten instead of X-Men Origins Wolverine. Not just the fact that it takes place after The Last Stand and is a sequel that doesn't affect the timeline, like X-Men Origins Wolverine recon the timeline, but in the fact that this movie actually explores the torment that Wolverine is feeling. He's still haunted by the events of The Last Stand. He's having this conflict of whether or not he wants to keep fighting, if he wants his healing powers to be removed and die peacefully like any other human being would. Then he's trying to protect this woman from people that want to harm her. And it also has a much more serious tone. It feels like with X-Men Origins Wolverine, it never had that serious tone that it probably should have. It felt like every time something big had happened, as I mentioned in my review, something goofy happened. You don't really get that here in this movie. And the few moments of humor you do get in this movie, they actually are humorous compared to the humor of X-Men Origins Wolverine. Hugh Jackman is once again great as always. It feels like with him being the main focus of this movie, it felt like he was able to go more all out as Wolverine in this movie. You have some new characters in this movie as well. You got Yukio, a mutant who can see people's deaths in the future deaths happening. You have Mariko, the granddaughter of the man that Wolverine saved, that Logan's trying to protect and later develops feelings for. The actresses that play those characters portray them very well. The action in this movie is a lot better. It doesn't feel like typical 1990s action. It actually feels a lot better. They definitely go for that PG-13 R-rated border where you never know if it's going to cross the R-rated sector of film. There's one action sequence in particular. They're on the bullet train. They're on top of it. And even though the train fight sequence in a superhero movie has become a typical thing, whether it was Spider-Man 2, Batman Begins, even Ant-Man with a toy car, it still was an epic, cool fight sequence. The fight sequences in this movie were great and entertaining. The animanium claws look a lot better in this movie. The special effects look a lot better. The themes are a lot better. The exploration of Japanese culture, the culture of the samurai, what had happened in World War II when Wolverine had saved Mariko's grandfather. All of it is handled very well. And for the first two acts, this was looking to be a great comic book movie. Not just a million times better than X-Men Origins Wolverine, but I thought this was going to probably be the best X-Men related movie we were going to get. But then the third act happens, and that's where the main problems lie in. The Wolverine, I almost called this X-Men Origins, sorry. The Wolverine suffers from what a lot of comic book movies, good or bad, suffer from. The third act being its stereotypical comic book action blockbuster mess. And James Mangold even came out and said that, we wanted to go for that smaller scale comic book movie, but because they were competing with Man of Steel and Thor: The Dark World that year, and obviously those are bigger stake movies where like end of the world themes happening, big third acts happen in those movies. Fox wanted to go for that, so that's why it turns into a big budget action movie at the end. But it's just some things about the third act that kind of bug me. For example, the random inclusion of the Silver Samurai in here. I wouldn't have minded so much if there was more of a build up to Silver Samurai. Maybe Silver Samurai could have had one or two confrontations with Wolverine before that eventual confrontation. That reminds me of the Doomsday Batman vs. Superman debacle. I know this movie came out before BVS. BVS didn't start this trend. It feels like the Wolverine might have started this trend. Or no, other movies have. I know the first Iron Man, Ironmonger being saved for the final fight of the movie, Abomination being saved for the final fight for the Incredible Hulk. But I feel like you can make the case that there was a better setup to the villains becoming Ironmonger and Abomination. It just felt like with Silver Samurai, there wasn't really any real buildup. First of all, it just feels like Silver Samurai is included just so Wolverine can have an epic big fight with another physical threat, because Viper, who was presented as the main antagonist of the movie, she's not a physical threat to Wolverine. Yeah, she did poison him earlier in the film, and that reduced his healing factor and made it harder for him to heal. But once he gets the healing factor, and even if he doesn't have the healing factor, if he's going berserk, she doesn't really stand a chance unless she gets a good wound in. So it feels like Silver Samurai is just included so Wolverine can have that big physical threat in the third act. And then the buildup as to who Silver Samurai is. I felt like you could have done a good mystery with who Silver Samurai is. I mean, there's a couple of hints because the character Yukio didn't foresee Mariko's grandfather's death happening because she can see people's deaths happening. Outside of that, though, it's just like there's really no interesting mystery factor. And once you kind of find out who he is, there's really no build up to it. It's just kind of like, oh, he's still alive and he's a Silver Samurai. I mean, the only hints that you get that he could be a possible threat besides Yukio not seeing his death happening is the sudden interest in wanting to take away Wolverine's healing factor. Because at first you're probably thinking, oh, it's just so, Wolverine pain and misery can be over and done with, and, he can die peacefully and reunite with Jean Grey in the afterlife. But outside of that, there just doesn't feel like there's really any buildup. And the thing is, there's a couple of antagonists in this movie that you could have maybe had as a suspect as to who Silver Samurai is. But it kind of felt like that before that, like they just started randomly, some got killed off, but then some just got like defeated right away. For example, the corrupt prime minister that is Mariko's fiance. Say Wolverine just tosses him in the pool, and he's lucky that he survives because Wolverine said, like, I didn't even know there was a pool down there. So he threw him with the intent of killing that character. And then there's Mariko's dad, who's jealous that Mariko was getting grandfather's company and all that once the grandfather passed away and he's trying to kill her. And then he dies. And, at first, like him and Yukio are having this fight while Wolverine is trying to get the thing out of him, off his heart that's poisoning him. And, it's a cool action sequence. But once Wolverine gets his healing factor, it's no competition. Wolverine basically takes care of that guy. And speaking of the antagonist, I will say this is the one X-Men related movie, the first X-Men related movie where I felt like there wasn't really any impressive antagonists in this movie. Usually X-Men movies, even the bad ones, at least have one or two decent villains. X-Men Origins Wolverine, at least Sabretooth was portrayed well. I thought Stryker, even though I would have preferred Brian Cox returning, I thought Stryker was portrayed well. Here, it's not that the performances were bad. I just felt like the villains didn't really add anything to it. It kind of felt like there were just all these minor antagonists that were in the movie, and they were just going to drop like flies once Wolverine took care of them. Viper was basically the main antagonist of the movie, and it's not that she was terrible. She just, outside of taking away Wolverine's healing factor and helping with the creation of Silver Samurai, once all that stuff's done, she just doesn't do anything else in the movie. And, the Silver Samurai Wolverine fight sequence, it's cool. He does cut off the adamantium claws and takes the adamantium out of Wolverine. And by the way, I have no problem with the bone claws. I know some people weren't a huge fan of them. I don't mind them. I'm not a big fan of them, but I don't mind them. It is what it is. But yeah, it just felt like once it was revealed who Silver Samurai was, it just felt very anticlimactic. And this was like one of those times where I felt like a third act hurt a really good movie, because the first two acts were very good. The development of the characters, of what Wolverine's going through his building relation with Mariko, the action sequences, the exploration of Japanese culture, all that was handled so well. It was building up to be one of the best X-Men movies. And then the third act just turns it into a typical superhero movie. And that stinks. I still like the movie, don't get me wrong. It doesn't make the movie bad, because there's been plenty of bad comic book movies that have had a decent, entertaining third act, but it never saved the movie. So this doesn't hurt the movie, but it does kind of bring it down in the X-Men standings. It's definitely way better than Thor: The Dark World that had come out later in that same year. Yeah, this was also the year that Iron Man 3, Man of Steel, and Thor: The Dark World came out. I kind of feel like we forget that the Wolverine was in between Man of Steel and Thor: The Dark World, because those were, big budget superhero movies. But despite the issues of the third act, despite not being impressed by the villains, I think the Wolverine was still a solid movie. Hugh Jackman once again delivers a great performance. The rest of the actors do a very good job. The action's great. I still enjoy the story. I think if maybe there was a better build-up to Silver Samurai, maybe more of a mystery factor added to it to make him more unique and interesting. And also the third fight just was handled better, the third act. This could have been not just one of the best X-Men movies, but one of the best solo superhero movies. I'm not going to lie. I think there was a great build-up, but certain things boggled it down. But despite that, I'm going to give The Wolverine a B+. I highly recommend you check this one out. And it also has a mid-credit scene that ties into X-Men Days of Future Past. Another movie that I'm eventually going to review on this channel after Deadpool Wolverine comes out. Like I said, I want to get through the solo Wolverine and Deadpool movies first. But yeah, The Wolverine. Have you seen it? What do you think about it? And what do you think is the most underrated comic book movie of all time? Let me know in the comments down below. And I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe already if you haven't. Please share this with someone that likes the X-Men movies, that likes Wolverine. And I hope to see you guys real soon. Take care, everyone.